Part 2. Operation Paper Chain, True Crime Drama Series, Seniors Are His Praise. He looked like a savior, but he was quietly stealing their homes one signature at a time. Welcome to African Stories by Asada, the Cynic Driver's YouTube channel. Where are you watching from? Before we dive into part 2 of the Operation Paper Chain story, we encourage you to rate the video and tell us in the comments below if you have fallen into a real estate scam or know someone who had fallen victim to a real estate-based scam. Let us know where you are watching from. Like, share, and subscribe so that you will be the first to be notified of our next video coming up. Just when the dust begins to settle, part 2 rips the story wide open. Because what started as one mother's mistake has now become a statewide manhunt for the truth. Alyssa Lockwood isn't just angry, she's armed with evidence, backed by investigators, and ready to expose a scheme that has robbed dozens of seniors of their homes. But uncovering the truth is only the beginning. Every step she takes pulls her deeper into a world of shell companies, fake appraisals, and a criminal network hiding behind polished professionalism. And Brandon Tate? He senses something is off, but not fast enough. As the task force builds a trap around him, the slightest misstep could trigger everything too early or allow him to escape forever. Tension thickens, loyalties crack, and a single undercover meeting has the power to bring the entire empire crashing down. Part 2 is where justice sharpens its teeth, where trust becomes a weapon, and where the hunter finally becomes the hunted. Brace yourself. The takedown is about to begin. Atlanta's morning humidity hung heavy as Alyssa stepped into the small operations room the task force had borrowed from the state attorney general's office. White boards covered the walls. Printouts of deeds and appraisal charts overlapped like a crime scene mosaic. Trevor Hunt tapped a pen against a spreadsheet. 42 confirmed victims, he said. Average undervaluation, 45%. Alyssa rubbed the bridge of her nose. They built an empire one grandmother at a time. The investigators around the table, 2 field agents, 1 digital forensics tech, waited for direction. Alyssa pointed to Brandon's photo. He built a pyramid on trust. We take the base first, the money trail. Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline. It felt fitting, storms suited justice. Trevor's team dove into financials, tracing the flow from Metro Equity's escrow accounts through Rachel Knox's trust ledgers. Every closing led to the same offshore account, cleverly disguised beneath routine transfers. He launders through investment property funds, Trevor explained. Legally murky but provable. Alyssa leaned over the monitor, eyes narrowing. Freeze them the second we confirm routing numbers. Trevor hesitated. We'll need probable cause. Alyssa's jaw set. Then let's go get it. She printed copies of the falsified appraisals, each stamped with Derek Miles's signature. Every sheet felt like a confession in ink. By afternoon, warrants for electronic surveillance were ready. Operation Paper Chain was officially live. Derek Miles never saw the unmarked sedan that followed him from his office to the liquor store that night. Inside, 2 agents watched as he bought cheap bourbon and sat in his car, drinking alone. He's breaking, one whispered. He's the weak link. Alyssa agreed. Keep eyes on him. When guilt becomes unbearable, he'll talk. They tailed him for days, recording calls between him and Brandon. Each conversation revealed more arrogance from the broker, more fear from his partner. Relax, Brandon laughed once. If we get audited, I'll make it a training exercise. Derek's reply was barely audible. You don't understand what's coming. 2 weeks later, the task force intercepted an email from Metro Equity's generic inbox. A new prospect had reached out, an elderly widow from Riverdale named Estelle Green. The name was fiction, the sender an undercover investigator named Dana Reeves. Her message was bait wrapped in vulnerability. My husband passed last year. I'm overwhelmed by the upkeep. Brandon replied within the hour. We specialize in helping folks like you. Let's meet Tuesday at 10. Alyssa read the exchange and allowed herself a small smile. He never could resist an easy mark. The sting had begun. Dana prepared meticulously. She studied videos of Brandon's past seminars, memorized his gestures, the rhythm of his voice. On Tuesday morning she arrived at a quiet diner near Grant Park wearing pearls and a shy smile. Hidden cameras in her glasses streamed directly to Alyssa's laptop across the street. Brandon slid into the booth, his charm immediate. "Mrs. Green, may I say, you remind me of my aunt. She taught school too." Dana blushed on cue. "Oh, I did love my students." He produced a folder, walking her through equity release options. Alyssa watched the feed, her pulse steady. When Brandon slid the low appraisal across the table, she whispered, "Got you." The next meeting took place in Brandon's office, every surface immaculate, the air faint with cologne and printer toner. Hidden microphones captured his voice as he guided Dana through signing preliminary documents. "Just initials, no commitments," he said smoothly. His notary stamp clicked against the paper with practiced precision. Outside, agents recorded the time. By evening, a wire transfer from Dana's account to Metro Equities escrow was in motion, money the state had planted and could legally trace. Trevor confirmed the receipt. Funds landed. "We're live." Alyssa stared at the timestamp like it was a detonator. "Then we hold until he moves it. Once he distributes, we go." Brandon spent that evening celebrating at a high-end steakhouse downtown, oblivious to the invisible audience cataloging every toast. He told Rachel Knox, another satisfied client, "Easiest close in months." Rachel forced a smile, hiding the unease growing in her gut. Later she emailed Brandon a question: why was the payment split across 3 accounts? But he ignored it. The next morning she found 2 plainclothes agents waiting at her office door. "Ms. Knox," one said politely, "we'd like to ask a few questions about Metro Equities closing procedures." Her composure cracked. The first domino had begun to fall. Alyssa didn't sleep that night. She sat at her desk watching the LiftTrace software flicker as the laundered funds moved from escrow to Brandon's Shell LLC. "He's distributing," Trevor said over the speakerphone. "Now." Alyssa grabbed her phone. "Execute." Across Atlanta, agents moved simultaneously, one to Brandon's office, another to Derek's apartment, a third to seize servers from Rachel's firm. It was quiet precision, no sirens, just the hum of coordinated justice. Alyssa stared out the window at the waking city, whispering, "For every one of them he fooled." Brandon's arrest was almost anticlimactic. He was hosting a breakfast seminar at a senior center in Marietta when 2 federal agents approached. "Mr. Tate." He turned, smiling automatically. "That's me. You're under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy, and elderexploitation." The smile died before the cuffs clicked. Phones captured the moment. Atlanta's model broker led away in disbelief. Outside, rain began to fall, washing dust from the sidewalk as if the city itself were cleaning a stain. Alyssa watched the footage from headquarters, her throat tightening. "He's done," Trevor said. She nodded slowly. "No. We're just beginning." The news broke before lunchtime. Every Atlanta station ran the same headline: "Mortgage broker arrested in massive senior home scheme." Reporters crowded the courthouse steps, shouting questions as Brandon, pale and shaken, was escorted inside. "Mr. Tate, do you have anything to say to your clients?" one yelled. He stared ahead, jaw tight, the cameras capturing the first crack in his composure. At Metro Equities' shuttered office, blinds hung crooked, phones rang unanswered. Victims began calling the hotline Alyssa had set up. One trembling voice said, "I thought I was alone." Another whispered, "He said he was helping me." Alyssa listened to the recordings between meetings, forcing herself not to cry. "We'll get them justice," she kept saying. But every voice deepened her resolve. She wasn't just prosecuting Brandon Tate. She was dismantling a culture that preyed on trust. Rachel Knox was the first to flip. Agents found her in her office late that night, hands trembling over her phone. "I didn't know it was fraud," she insisted. "I just handled the closings." Alyssa met her eyes across the interview table. "You knew enough to ask the right questions, Ms. Knox. You just didn't." Rachel exhaled shakily. "If I cooperate, can I keep my license?" "That's between you and the board," Alyssa replied. "But cooperation might keep you out of prison." Within hours, Rachel surrendered her firm's digital records, emails, escrow statements, internal notes, all naming Brandon as the orchestrator. Among them was an encrypted message labeled valuation targets. It contained every property, every victim, every dollar. Alyssa stared at the list for a long moment. "This is it," she murmured. "The full map of the damage." The silence in the room felt like judgment itself. Derek Miles didn't wait to be arrested. He walked into the DA's office unshaven, exhausted, carrying a file box. "I can't live with this anymore," he told the receptionist. When Alyssa met him in the conference room, he pushed the box across the table. "Appraisals, emails, everything. I didn't sign up for this. I just didn't stop it." Alyssa studied him. He looked older than his 40 years, hollowed out by guilt. "You'll testify?" she asked. He nodded. "He ruined people. Including me." As he spoke, his voice broke. He said nobody would notice because old people don't fight back. Alyssa's stomach turned. "They will now," she said. For the first time since the case began, Derek smiled weakly. "Could make it hurt." He stood and left without another word, a man finally unburdened. The trial began 3 months later in Fulton County Superior Court. The courtroom overflowed with reporters, victims, and curious onlookers. Brandon, now thinner, sat beside his defense attorney in an expensive suit that suddenly looked cheap. Alyssa entered with her team, files stacked like bricks of evidence. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, called the room to order. State of Georgia versus Brandon Tate. The first witnesses were financial experts and investigators, methodical, precise, devastating. Charts glowed on screens, tracing the stolen millions from one account to another. Brandon's expression hardened, but the sweat on his temple betrayed him. The defense argued the victims had consented. Alyssa's rebuttal was surgical. Consent obtained through deception is not consent. It's coercion in a tailored suit. The jury took notes. The tide was turning. When Marian Lockwood took the stand, the room hushed. She wore her best blazer, the same one she'd used for years of teaching, though her hands trembled slightly as she swore the oath. "Mrs. Lockwood," Alyssa began gently, "can you tell us what Mr. Tate promised you?" Marian's voice was soft but clear. "He said he'd protect me. He said my home would still be mine." Her eyes met Brandon's. "He lied." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Alyssa guided her carefully through the documents. "Did you understand this was a sale?" "No. I thought it was a safeguard." Her voice broke. "I trusted him." Brandon shifted, eyes down. When Marian stepped down, Alyssa placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You did nothing wrong," she whispered. "You gave them your trust. We'll take the rest back." The prosecution's case built like a symphony of evidence. Derek's testimony confirmed the falsified appraisals, Rachel's emails proved intent, and the undercover recordings sealed the narrative. One clip played for the jury captured Brandon's voice saying, "Old folks want simplicity, they'll sign anything if you sound sincere." The words hung in the air like poison. Brandon's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. Alyssa watched jurors exchange looks of disgust. Each fact added another weight to the scale. The defense tried to paint Brandon as a businessman overwhelmed by success, but the recordings told the truth: calculated exploitation. By the time the final witness stepped down, the jurors already knew what they would decide. In the days before the verdict, Alyssa couldn't sleep. She walked the quiet hallways of her hotel, replaying her mother's trembling voice from months earlier. Marian stayed with friends, refusing to attend the closing arguments. "I don't want to see him again," she'd said. Alyssa understood. During the prosecution's final statement, she faced the jury. "He didn't need a gun to steal from them," she said. "He used paper, ink, and trust. The kind of theft that scars deeper than robbery because it turns goodness into weakness." She paused, letting the words settle. "We ask you to show that trust is still sacred in Georgia." The courtroom was silent when she sat down. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours. When they returned, the foreman's voice was steady, "Guilty on all counts." Brandon closed his eyes, shoulders sagging. A gasp swept through the room. followed by quiet sobbing from victims' families. Alyssa felt no triumph, only release. Marion, watching from home, whispered, "Thank you, Harold," as tears traced her cheeks. Outside, reporters crowded the steps again, microphones waving. "Miss Lockwood, how does it feel?" Alyssa simply said, "It feels overdue." That night she and Trevor toasted quietly in the nearly empty office. "You think he understands what he did?" Trevor asked. Alyssa shook her head. "Men like him don't understand loss until it's their own." Sentencing day drew a packed courtroom. The judge reviewed each charge: wire fraud, racketeering, elderexploitation. "You turned the law into your weapon," she told Brandon. "Now it will be your punishment." 24 years federal. Restitution ordered. As marshals led him away, Brandon glanced once at Alyssa, a fleeting mixture of anger and recognition. She met his gaze without a word. Outside, victims embraced, their relief tinged with grief for what they'd lost. Reporters asked Marion for comment. She smiled gently. "I forgive him," she said. "But I don't forget." The next week, Georgia's legislature passed the Lockwood Act, mandating independent oversight on senior real estate transactions. Justice had left its signature in law. Weeks after sentencing, the Metro Equity sign came down. The office stood empty, its glass walls reflecting nothing but traffic. Alyssa drove past once, slowing at the curb. Inside, desks were bare, phones disconnected, a ghost of ambition left behind. She parked for a moment, watching the maintenance crew peel the logo from the door. Trusted since 2014 slid free and dropped into a trash bag. Only then did she feel the weight of the past months settle. Trevor called later to say the restitution fund had begun returning small checks to victims. "It's not enough," Alyssa said. "It never is," he replied. That night she allowed herself a glass of wine, staring at the skyline she had come to know too well. The city looked almost innocent again, as if it too wanted a fresh start. Marion adjusted slowly to her new home near Marietta Square, a smaller bungalow with creaking floors and a sunlit porch. Each morning she brewed coffee, watered her roses, and read the paper, skipping the crime section. Neighbors stopped by, some recognizing her from the news. "You were brave," one said. Marion smiled shyly. "My daughter was." Still, loneliness lingered. She missed the smell of her old house, the echo of her husband's laughter in the hall. But when she passed the community bulletin board and saw a flyer for Senior Legal Awareness Week, she smiled wider. At the bottom, in neat print, it read, "Guest speaker, Marion Lockwood, protecting your legacy." She folded the corner gently and whispered, "Maybe this is what home means now." A month later, Alyssa spoke at the state capitol as the Lockwood Act officially took effect. Cameras flashed, legislators applauded, and yet she felt humbled rather than proud. "This law isn't mine," she said into the microphones. "It belongs to every person who trusted and lost." Behind her, Marion sat beside Trevor, clapping quietly. Reporters asked for details, but Alyssa's answers were simple: transparency, oversight, dignity. Afterward, on the Capitol steps, a woman approached her, one of the earliest victims. She clasped Alyssa's hands. "You gave us back our faith," the woman said. Alyssa felt her throat tighten. "Keep it," she replied. "It's the only currency crooks can't steal." The woman nodded, tears bright in her eyes. That evening, mother and daughter ate dinner on Marion's porch. The sun dipped low, painting the yard gold. "Do you ever miss the courtroom rush?" Marion asked. Alyssa laughed softly. "It's still there, only quieter. Justice doesn't always shout, sometimes it just exhales." They ate lemon bars for dessert, the same recipe Marion had once baked for her students. The air smelled of sugar and cut grass. "You know," Marion said, "I used to worry you worked too hard. Now I'm grateful you did." Alyssa reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "You taught me how to stand up, Mom. I just finally got to prove I learned." For the first time in months, they laughed freely, the sound carrying into the warm evening like a promise kept. As months passed, the Legal Literacy Center for Seniors opened downtown, funded entirely by recovered assets. Alyssa visited on opening day, watching volunteers explain contracts to rows of elderly attendees. Marian sat in the front row, taking notes as if back in class. A mural on the wall read, "Knowledge is ownership." The phrase struck Alyssa deeply. Brandon Tate's empire had collapsed, but something far greater had risen in its place, a quiet revolution of awareness. When the event ended, an old man approached her holding a brochure. "Thanks to you, I'm keeping my house," he said. Alyssa smiled. "That's the best verdict I've ever heard." One evening, months later, a letter arrived at Marian's door. No return address, just neat handwriting. Inside was a single line, "I'm sorry." She studied the signature, Brandon Tate. For a long while she said nothing, simply folded the paper and slid it into her Bible. When Alyssa visited the next morning, she found it on the table. "Are you angry?" he wrote. Marian shook her head. "No. People like him spend years learning how to take. Maybe prison taught him what giving feels like." Alyssa exhaled slowly. "Forgiveness suits you. And pursuit suits you," Marian replied, smiling. "We make a good pair." Spring returned to Georgia with soft rain and magnolia blooms. Alyssa walked alone through Grant Park, the city breathing quietly around her. The case was over, yet its echoes remained in every client she helped, every lecture she gave. She stopped beneath a tree heavy with blossoms, inhaling the scent of renewal. Her phone buzzed, a message from Trevor, "New lead in Macon. Similar scam starting up." She smiled, tired but ready. "Then let's get to work," she murmured. Somewhere, in the distance, church bells rang across the city. Justice, she thought, never truly ends, it just changes addresses. She turned toward the sunlight, the petals drifting like paper over her shoes, and walked forward, daughter, prosecutor, survivor, into a future her mother's courage had made possible. 2 years later, Atlanta had changed, but so had Alyssa. The skyline no longer looked like a battleground but a living city, pulsing with ordinary grace. She now led the Financial Crimes Division for the Georgia Attorney General's office, a position she had never sought but earned through sheer resilience. Her office overlooked the same courthouse steps where Brandon Tate had once been led away in handcuffs. Each morning she stood there for a moment before work, coffee in hand, letting the view remind her of the cost of justice. It wasn't glory or fame, it was balance. The Lockwood Act had spread beyond Georgia now. 3 other states had adopted its model. She'd testified before Congress once, nervous at first, then steady when she spoke her mother's name aloud. "Marian Lockwood," she said that day, "taught me that trust is not a weakness. It's a covenant." The chamber had gone silent, every word sinking in like stone. Marian herself had become something of a legend in quiet circles. Each Thursday she taught a free class at the Legal Literacy Center, her voice patient as she guided seniors through the fine print of deeds and contracts. "You don't have to read fast," she'd say with a chuckle. "Just don't stop reading." Her students adored her, retired nurses, veterans, widows, people who saw in her calm presence the reassurance that wisdom still had weight. Sometimes, after class, she and Alyssa would sit by the fountain outside, sipping iced tea and talking about simple things. A new neighbor, a recipe, a book they both meant to finish. The pain of losing her old home had softened into something else, not regret, but purpose. "He took my house," Marian often said, "but he gave me a cause." Alyssa never corrected her. She understood perfectly. On a soft spring morning, mother and daughter returned to the old neighborhood. The hydrangeas in front of Marian's former home had bloomed again, blue and lush. A young family lived there now, children's laughter spilled from the backyard. Marian smiled through the fence. "That's how it should be," she said. Alyssa nodded, slipping her arm through her mother's. They walked slowly toward the car, sunlight flashing across the windshield, the city alive with renewal. Justice, Alyssa realized, wasn't about erasing the past. It was about redeeming it, turning broken trust into shared strength. As they drove away, Marian looked out at the houses passing by and whispered, "You know, I think your father would have been proud." Alyssa smiled, eyes on the road ahead. "I know," she said softly. "He already is." The wind rushed through the open window, warm and free, carrying with it the sound of two women who had turned loss into legacy. A quick takeaway. At its heart, this story is about the quiet strength of ordinary people and the danger of mistaking kindness for weakness. Brandon Tate's scheme thrived not because he forged papers, but because he forged trust, exploiting the decency of those who believed in honesty and integrity. Yet it was that same decency, embodied in Marion's courage and Alyssa's relentless pursuit of justice, that ultimately brought him down. The story reminds us that real justice isn't found in courtrooms alone. It lives in awareness, accountability, and compassion. It warns how greed hides behind polished manners and legal jargon, but also shows how truth, when defended by conscience, can rebuild what deceit destroys. The broker who preyed on seniors is a testament to vigilance and the enduring power of love between a mother and daughter, a reminder that while homes can be stolen, integrity cannot. Moral lesson. Greed often hides behind a smile, and deception wears the clothes of professionalism. The broker who preyed on seniors reminds us that integrity means protecting those who trust us most, especially the vulnerable who believe goodness still counts for something. True justice begins when we refuse to stay silent in the face of exploitation. Laws can punish, but only compassion, awareness, and courage can prevent. In the end, the measure of a society is not how it rewards ambition, but how it safeguards dignity. Trust is sacred. Once broken, it can destroy. Once defended, it can heal. Trust is the quiet currency of the good. Spend it wisely, protect it fiercely, and never let the greedy write its terms. Thanks for watching. Please leave comments, like, share, and subscribe so that you will be the first to be notified of our next video coming up.